Welcome everybody, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or even in the middle of the night or wherever you are in the world. I just want to welcome to you this webinar. It was a 3-part series. I do have resources for the part 1 and the part 2 if you're interested. It will all be up on the OECM website, or you can just reach out to me and I will make sure you get it. It will have the PowerPoint along with any notes and all the links and all the resources I'm using for the presentation. I do intend to record, which you obviously know if you're watching this recording, but it's through Zoom. I would like to introduce myself. I am a consultant with the Advanced Learning Partnerships. I'm also a special education teacher. My title is Special Assignment Teacher for Gifted and Enrichment at the HWDSB, and I'm an instructor for the ABQ course, junior level at Brock University. I blog and I'm on Twitter, so you can always reach out if you have any questions about these games that I'm sharing today. As we gather, regardless of where you are or when you are, take a moment to acknowledge where you are coming from, as I do throughout the day, whether I'm online or face-to-face. I am from Hamilton, Ontario. I'm situated on this treaty land that's home to many First Nations and Inuit and Métis people. And I know that the history does not start at the point of European contact. It begins long before and includes the Anishinaabe and the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and the Métis people, and it continues to the present day. And I am committed as a community member of Ontario to and I have a responsibility of the stewardship of the land on which I live, work, and teach. And I acknowledge the harms of the past and take action to help in healing the future. I'm going to skip that one. So the session is being brought to you by OECM, and it's in partnership with Dell Technology and ALP. Just for your information, if you're wondering what all these places are, OECM is a nonprofit sourcing partner for Ontario's education sector. So they contract with different organizations to kind of provide these sessions, which they've done. And they provided sessions for all of September and October, and I believe there are some in November. So lots of really good ones out there. And Advanced Learning Partnership is one of the people they partner with. It's a consulting firm. I am part of Advanced Learning Partnership specifically with the role of being in a support role for girls who game. I'll talk about that in a minute. I would like, so lots of you reach out to me online, on my blog, but mostly on Twitter. And I just want to say that's a big part of my life when it comes to sharing resources. Many of the things I am sharing today I probably learned from Twitter and from people in my network. So I feel very good about that. So there was 2 parts. So if you didn't see both parts, part 1 was really focused on research and the science behind game-based learning and social emotional learning. A few people have reached out just to get the resources because it helps them when they are digging into this in the classroom, and they want to have sort of that evidence to show, no, what I'm doing is sound pedagogy and how it connects to the pedagogy that is within wherever they are teaching. Part 2, I talked about things like low floor, high ceiling, or low threshold, some people say. And we looked at games like DIXIT, DIXIT, and a few others in there as well. And I will, again, if you want to reach out to me, I can share those resources. And then today is we're going to look at some online games and role play games. So it all really focuses on social emotional learning. And the agenda today is we're going to look at the science, sort of the review of the last 2 sessions. I'm going to share on how I approach Minecraft and play in the classroom. And financial literacy, I will share a lesson sort of mini unit that I created and give you all the resources you need with that. I'm going to share a new game called New Ami. It's an Inuit created board game, and I wish I had it here, but I don't. And it's at school. I forgot to bring it to show you, but I do have some pictures online, but it's a really cool game, brand new. And then I will share some links to some both tabletop games and that are good for the classroom, as well as digital games. So In our previous two sessions, we talked about the research and science which supports play-based learning. And specifically, we learned that there is a significant amount of research that recognizes that play-based learning actually leads to social, emotional, and academic success. And in some of the research I talked about, it was not only that it supports academic success, but there are some theories and researchers out there studying so much the value of play-based learning as an approach in the classroom that they're saying that it's almost better than the traditional approaches that we have that we're also familiar with. It's supported, they say that it expands intelligence, it expands imagination, encourages creative problem solving. The thing is, we often use these kinds of things within, as an extra, like an extracurricular activity or the game club, at lunchtime, versus actually integrating it into our everyday lessons. The resource that I'm sharing with you here, which will again is shared within the do I see that Katina is here as well? Maybe the resource here is going to be shared. It's called an esports educated. Hi, Katina. Is an esports educator guide. And again, if you did not get the link, and I guess Katina, you might not have gotten it if you came in late. It was in the chat of all the notes and resources, but I will share everything, part 1, part 2, part 3 at the end if you all would like. So this is a fantastic resource, and I know that it comes out of Minecraft education with the Microsoft, but it actually is a literature study. So it's taking resources, a lot of the same people that I've talked about in the last couple sessions about what the value of play is and learning, and what the statistics say and what the experts are saying. And experts on the importance of play are saying just like that students are learning to learn. Not only that, they're applying the learning that they've already done through play. It's a great way that we can actually assess students through their actions of play. So it's just really important. This guide is absolutely fabulous. And again, I've shared that on the resource. Digital-based game-based learning is what I'm going to talk about mostly tonight, but I do have some physical games, some brand new ones I want to share with you that I just got, in fact, just today. My very first one here that I wanted to share is called, if you can see it in the camera, Word on the Street. And it's a tug of words game. I'm looking forward to trying it. I can't really give my feedback yet. And another one is called Proof. It's a card game, and what this one is, you can make equations, and when you based on a whole bunch of numbers that are out on the table, and when you get an equation, then you take those cards and you start over. And of course, the winner is the one that doesn't have any cards at the end. So it's kind of a neat math game. Both was language and math. So we'll share a bit on that. Feel free if you have any information. Oh, yes, thank you for doing that, Stacy. Feel free to certainly turn your mic on if you have any questions, if I don't see any of your questions in the chat, if I missed something. A big part of what we have talked about from the beginning, and this was really interesting, something new that I learned, is something called situated learning. And it's a term that stuck out to me during my own inquiry about play-based learning, and it strongly speaks to my own philosophy of teaching, maybe yours as well, because it comes from a constructivist approach. Dewey and Vygotsky, for instance, who suggest students learn by actively participating, right? There's that sense of agency. And no matter where I went, I kept seeing that word, that children, when they're learning through play, feel like they have more control about what's going on versus being recipients of information being given to them. So I found that really interesting, the term situated learning, which enables students to develop skills and knowledge that is transferred and applied to other problems. And I talked about this as well, that really play is not just learning through play, but it's actually transferring their learning from other avenues into play, which is fascinating. So there's Farber is a book that I recommended It's brand new. He wrote it during the pandemic, and it really focuses on play and social emotional learning. And then very, very, very quickly, because I feel like I always need to address that, think about play-based learning is different than gamification. And we get those two terms mixed up a lot in education. And game-based learning is learning through the game as you're doing the game. Things like I just showed you, this game proof or word on the street, you're learning skills and strategies through the game. Whereas gamification, you may also be doing game-based learning, but you're getting badges and points and stickers and rewards. And based on those, that's what's motivating you to learn. So they're very different. Universally designed, I need to make sure I focus on this again, because any game that I ever do needs to be a game that all students can learn or can approach. And so is this something that you can easily modify, easily accommodate? Can you turn it into audio? Can you, I try to really, really think about that universal design strategies that we know so well in the class. And then lastly is the low floor, high ceiling, which I talked about in the last session. If you haven't heard that, you probably see that term on Joe Bowler's site, UCubed, where it's those students, low floor is that anybody can start that task. That's sort of a wonderful, baseline, anybody, and then people can go as high as they want, versus a task or a project that's really difficult to get started, high floor, and it would actually dissuade or detract or maybe frustrate, or maybe just students would be tuned out or turn off if it's too difficult to get started. That would be high floor. So what we want to do is low floor, but then allow them to stretch up. So scaffolding, really. So the very first game I want to share, and I absolutely love, this is my very, very favorite game. I would love this if it was in person and I could show it to you. It's a game on finances. And before I share my own lesson, I did find this resource here, which I've included in the link, which is a case study. So it's Playful Learning Meets Curriculum Goals. And the resource goes through a case study of a teacher that used financial literacy learning skills throughout, kind of in a role play scenario. Absolutely fascinating what they did in the classroom. So their unit kicked off with students examining currencies. And they would, I would love to have been part of this classroom, but because there's so much depth into what they did. But they examined currencies from perhaps their own, culture, from wherever their families are from, including where they're currently from, and did some comparison and so on. Then they decided to create their own currency. And so Ida is the classroom teacher, if it says that. So there was a lot of reflection in there. Then with the students, they looked at samples of teacher slips, which are government, right? So they could easily look at samples of slips, pay slips. And they started to look at taxation, what taxes meant. I mean, there's just so much in there. This was a primary classroom, by the way. They eventually, when I went through it, they eventually had used credit cards. They made a store within their classroom. It became, this year-long endeavor. Absolutely fabulous. So I highly recommend you taking a look at what they did. They were empowered to make choices, to consult their classmates. They kept track of money. It just became such a part of their classroom environment. It had depth in there that I think would be beneficial. And it really is game-based learning. That role play. The lesson I did was nothing too innovative or new. I called it the game of life, and it was to have students explore how money works in the world. And what we started with, so you can imagine, it was really more of a unit that took a couple of days, and the students would start with the big question of what's a living wage? And we began a little bit by talking about the words like poverty, words like What does it mean to be rich? What does it mean to not have money? What does it mean to go without? That kind of thing. And so we would brainstorm those big concepts. We know that financial literacy is a skill that we all need. It affects every single individual that, as they get older. It impacts mental health. It impacts how we interact with the world around us. And so it was important for me to do this activity. But what was fun about it was, it had many layers. So one of the layers, and this is a spreadsheet here. Oops, sorry about that. Again, you have the link to this in the link I gave you, but it's the actual slideshow that I used to kind of deliver the lesson. And before we did anything, one of the layers was to teach them how to use spreadsheets. So these were kids in about grade 4 and 5, and not just for graphs, but actually use some of the coding skills and spreadsheets, the formulas. They absolutely loved being able to do that. It was just fun to play with numbers and see how they can, make certain columns add up, and thought it was magical. And sometimes these are not always the skills that they're perhaps learning in the regular class. I'm a pull-out teacher and enrichment teacher, so I could do these. And just today I found this was just today, October 23rd. Oh, maybe it wasn't today, this week. This is someone from Microsoft who does a lot of sharing of resources, and he has an excellent little tiny lessons on how to use Excel if you don't know how yourself, but so worth looking at. So we just played with basic Excel. So the very first challenge then was we looked at percents and ratio, because we knew that we were going to get into taxes. And so if I said to the students in the game that I'm going to share with you in a minute that, okay, well, if your annual salary is this, you're going to have this many taxes taken off. So we need to deduct that from your budget, which they're going to create. And it really got them thinking about how salary works and how deductions work. So we kind of looked a little bit about that. And I'm just sharing kind of the overall lesson plan that I have. They would then look at fixed and variable expenses. And we did that. That took about an hour, half an hour as a group. And we did some pair share. And then them having to know, well, what's fixed. And so they actually brought in some bills from home, and they looked at what hydro costs, and well, how come like that kids hydro they have a pool, and wow, I didn't realize my parents paid that much more because we have a pool in the backyard, versus maybe hydro in a house or an apartment that is perhaps paid for, right, if they're renting. And so we had those kinds of conversations. And should hydro be a right, should we have to pay what we pay? And then here I'm going ahead, then it was the spreadsheet basics. And so the students, I'm not going to do it with you, I was going to, but so the students then would create as a group or on the computer, I would help them a spreadsheet that said fixed expenses, and they would come up with do I have it on here? I think maybe I do. Here it is. So you can get an idea. This is probably from a student. So they would put the item, and I think I copied and pasted it. So you can see item, and they'd have their mortgage and their electricity. They go on and on until they have their total, and then they'd have variable in their total, and then they'd have her income. This is part of the game. And then they would have a summary of the whole bit. This is quite a bit of taxes. A lot of the students were shocked that 20% could be taken off your income. And then they were given these scenarios. So you can again, you should have the link in the resource, I believe. But these scenario, again, you do have all of this. But these scenarios are then things like, let's see if I have, here is one right here. Here you can, if you can hardly see this, but it's, so they would, each group or each person, it says people, it's an adult and a child, their minimum wage income in Ontario, that would be 40 hours, what their home was, rental, or, they were one bedroom, they did not have a car, or it was paid off, right? And so on. And so that was who they became during the game. And, and there was different, well, here's another one, an adult with an ability, another disability, pardon me, and 2 children, right? Everybody had a different scenario for the game. And so before they got the scenario, they came up with their budget. And, they did it based on like travel, based on clothing, based on all their sporting events, based on all these extra things they had. So when they got their scenario, then I said, okay, go back to your income and fix it, because your income as a minimum wage worker in Ontario is not going to be for what you have here. So they fixed their income and so on, and realized, oh, I need to take some things out. I need to like delete things from my budget. This is not working. And it goes back to that whole living wage. And then I have a game of life pieces I made. And each of these, once the kids had their templates ready, I then said, okay, game started. And I would pull out these pieces, and I would simply say, okay, you have a minute to adjust your budget and your life game here. And for example, the bus workers just are striking for fair wages. You need to take a taxi to work now. How much more is that going to cost you? And they had to add that, so there'd be different game life pieces coming up. And they were, time for holidays. It's Christmas. You needed to now take money out of your savings, how much you're going to take per person. And then that would bring up a conversation about budget and family. There was one that you picked up a side job presenting at a conference or writing an article in a magazine, add yourself $300 more this month. And they'd all be like, yeah, and super excited about that. Right. So, and that really was it. And they never want to stop. It was like, hey guys, like it's time to lunch, time for recess. They just wanted to keep going. And it was one of those things we could say, well, do you guys want to play the game of life for a bit? And they'd go back and I give them a different role scenario. I'd get, when we do it, because they'd start just loving doing the budget on these spreadsheets. So definitely is worth taking a look at. Here's one: an accident has occurred for one adult in your family. You cannot work for the next 6 months. Your salary goes down by 35%. So now it's pause. Okay, how do you deduct 35% in your salary? And there's a quick math question. Oh, I didn't know why. That's why we had to do percents, right? And it's that learning through the game, right? I'm just teaching percents, teaching taxation, teaching sort of the whole idea of budgeting, right? And ratios between that sort of, so it's quite interesting. And I've shared this lesson in its entirety with you. And just briefly, because I like to kind of have a purpose and an aim with the lessons, it is a design thinking lesson because they're generating new creative possibilities for financial decisions and choices. They use those concepts to kind of do that, reiterate things of thinking. It's an inquiry based, it's play based learning, it's project based learning. There's constructivism there. And even there was the mindfulness of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, where they were looking at some of the financial responsibilities we have as a government, and that if you were identified as an Indigenous person in the classroom or within the city, what kind of finances would you have that were different than others or not have, and such. So, and this is what you are getting, right? All the links to the slides, the lesson plan, life game situation, and the monthly budget. So that's one of my favorite kind of play based, and it's not a bot game like this. It's not a showy game, but it is definitely one of the favorites on here. The second game that has been a real passion for me for maybe almost about 12 years now is Minecraft. And I had a conversation with some grade 8 students just today about Minecraft and where their minds were at. And some of them are saying, well, we played Minecraft when we were in grade 1. We don't play it anymore. And I said, come on, guys, really? And then slowly some of them came up and said, is that all right? I admit I still, because they have a concept of Minecraft still as this thing they did to play, which is okay. But when Minecraft went into education, which it wasn't originally, it wasn't developed for that. Like many educational tools are developed specifically for education, Minecraft wasn't. It came into education because some amazing, innovative educators went, oh, wait a second, this is groundbreaking. This is amazing. And it's in, I love this quote. I got this from one of the sites of on Minecraft education, but it's considered a great equalizer. It's low floor, high ceiling. It's universally designed, and it's a place that anybody can go in and build and create, no matter how old they are. My son, who's at U of T, was using Minecraft in one of his classes, in a chemistry class, which is kind of cool. And I put this because this was a blog taken from my own blog that I wrote in 2010. And my question to everybody in 2010 was, as an educator, what would you do if you could have an unlimited amount of Lego, robotics, coding, building supplies, color, to teach math, science, engineering, language? It's there. We do have it. So why are we not all using it? And so it's Minecraft is a limitless tool, and we can make it work. The digital based learning does focus on things like your STEM learning, digital literacies, 21st century learning. This again applies to Minecraft. This particular it's a conceptual model, was taken from the esports model for Minecraft, which I found fascinating. But some people think you had to actually go into Minecraft to bring Minecraft in your classroom, and you don't. So sometimes it's just meeting kids where they're at with the game. And so this was an example where some of my kids would just create problems and math problems, and they wanted to, as an extension to their learning. So here's some kid, they had the iron problem. How much iron would you need to craft 10 sets of iron armor and 5 sets of tools, and so on, right? It's taking their language, what they're used to, in there. When I first began to use Minecraft with my students, it wasn't about the build. It was just about free play and letting them discover the resources. We all know it as a creative mode, but the students didn't want it in creative mode. They had to like mine the resources and find them, and so many of this. I didn't know how all that worked at the time, but eventually the kids would start sharing problems like this with me, and it became part of my assessment with the students. Here's one. Per chunk, 64 by 64. There's 3 diamonds on an average. You're required to make a diamond armor and a diamond sword, and 18 players. Like it's like absolutely amazing that they can bring these kinds of concepts into the classroom, right? It's math. And then the student would blog, right? So there's your literacy sharing. So they made a math problem in Minecraft. Then they wanted people to go into the Minecraft and to go and answer and share their Minecraft. So it wasn't just about them going in the world and doing activities. They were making the activities to be done. I am going to keep going, unless there was any comments. No. This was one of my favorites, and I'm sharing this because I think there's so much more that we can do with this. So, it was an empty blank world, and the lessons used creative mode. It was collaborated on a poem. The poem wrote Robert Frost. And what they did is they had their own poems as well. So there was again couple layers. So they together as a group created a visualization of Robert Frost's poem, and then put the signs up and so on. But then there were secret little spaces within that world where they would put their poems in as well. I could see this doing this again, or also with other poetry. For example, Amanda Gorman, who did some incredible speaking poems, some has been published at a very young age. I could see going into that because there's a lot of imagery, right? And especially in what she, some of the topics that she writes about is about social justice and equity and Black Lives Matter, and environment is a big one as well. So you can see here's a picture of it, of the actual finish. The 2 words diverge in a wood, and you can see, or 2 roads. Did I say words? And you can kind of see, I did a screenshot of that one, but it was fun, that one. With Minecraft, when you bring it in the classroom, it doesn't have to be complicated. I think that's why I was showing. I mean, you can just have them go into a blank world. You can just start from, you don't need to be an expert yourself. You're the expert at teaching. You don't have to be the expert at knowing specifically how each one of those tools or products work. But it is important to be present, because they still sometimes, they struggle with that, finding that that balance, or going that line that's drawn between play and learning, which is okay. But sometimes there can be behavioral issues. They can destroy each other's, like there is in a regular classroom. You shouldn't just let them go play. In Minecraft, you should also be there. That is my recommendation. If you leave it unsupervised, say during lunch or recess or during class, there are functions and spaces in the game where they can destroy one another's work, and that has happened. There's lots of examples. Another activity, here's the wall inquiry. How do symbols in history take and help us understand ourselves? How do lessons serve as metaphors to help and understand and make meaning in our own lives, and so on? So this was, again, a low floor, high ceiling, where they had to start thinking about barriers. And we used the coming down of the Berlin Wall anniversary, right? It was all over the news. And so the students looked at the news with that, and then they created they had to recreate some imagery of a barrier and what it meant. But they were also, of course, using some of the historical context of the Berlin Wall in that case. And it brought in a lot of empathy, and terms of what some folks might have felt like on the East, for example, when that happened, and also what happened and how people felt when the wall came down, and also those kinds of conversations like, well, what barriers do you experience? Again, game-based learning. And bringing in your own social emotional learning. This was diving into a design activity that was let me go back here. It was a student looked at the famous dams around the world, and then as part of an inquiry, they used Minecraft to showcase the design. But what I found fascinating about it was the amount of empathy that was created through this, because as they had their world in Minecraft, they had to create this dam, and they knew at that point that they were going to be destroying certain parts of the environment, animal habitats. They knew that the dam would also block water off from one area to the other. Like, they started, because they were doing it, there's that constructivist perspective. They really started feeling what it must feel like. That yes, we do, the Hoover Dam, for example, is one of the ones that we talked about. That's the one in this picture. They realize that that's what provides energy for places like Las Vegas and so on, and lots of people go there. But what are the ramifications of that? And it really brought in that empathy. And some of the game-based research talks about empathy in terms of us using games and being able to connect with characters. But it's not just connecting with characters, it's us being able to connect with events, with engineering situations like the one you see here. So there is some interesting examples in that book by Farber, where he talks about historical empathy. Yeah, there's another picture of the Minecraft, and if you look, that's version 1.72. I don't even know what version we're in right now, but that was quite a while ago. So the Minecraft, if you haven't used it, it's for most districts in Ontario right now. It is a part of our Office 365 account. So whatever your login is for your school account, you should be able to also log in Minecraft. It may not be everywhere, but it's worth checking. There are many people for example, in my own district who didn't even realize that they had an account. And so I'm like, no, we have accounts. So it's worth checking. And if you don't know, then you just go into Minecraft, and it very simply, it actually has a little drop down quick start, where if you're an educator, you click on educator, you say either I need an account or I have an account, and then it gets you to put in your work account, and it will tell you if you have one or not. So it's pretty easy to find, and it walks you through the process step by step. And it says, okay, now download it here. If you're on a Chromebook, download it. Here's the app. If you're on an iPad, download it here. If you're on a MacBook or on a Windows based computer. So it has, it's very, very, very intuitive and user friendly. And then when you go in, you can kind of, they already have these pre-designed worlds, which this is a bit different than I showed you with some of the ways I used Minecraft in terms of having the kids design. But I think that there's benefits to all of it. Designing a vehicle, spaceships, area and volume, Minecraft book covers. There's one I've seen, that often people are using is to design your own symbol of who you are. And of course, you give them some kind of area that they would use, and a little museum of the classroom, and they get to design some of their favorite things within Minecraft. There's kit subjects, and this is what I was telling my son at U of T was using some of these subject kits. Finally, esports in Minecraft, which is brand new as in like the last 6 months, I think. But esports in generally has been very well established in Asia prior to in North America for almost 20 years. There are esports schools, there are families and parents that invest in their children to become competitive esports players. There's cafes all over. I had the pleasure myself of being able to go and watch esports event in Korea and South Korea at one point, as well as in Japan. So gaming is an acceptable sport like any other sport would be. And it's just fascinating when you actually see it at that level. And I think it's coming into North America at high speed. Any thoughts on that, anyone? Okay. So what Minecraft, we do have a, yeah, so Katina has really helped me dig deeper and see what's available in Katina from Dell has helped me and taught me a little bit also on the use of these newer platforms in Minecraft Education Edition. But if you look, I did a screenshot of the boats. So kind of, I just want to show you that in an esports, because this is a conversation I have with my own children who are older, who have said, there's no way, you can't do esports in Minecraft. There's no, like, who wins? It's creative. How do you pick a winner? It's not that same gaming strategy that they have when there's, a clear-cut winner. And I think people struggle with that for Minecraft. This particular image shows you that there's 2 areas a team or even just individual people will go to. And then what I did is I just wanted to kind of, for people who are watching this, just kind of walk you through that it is actually not very, at first things, oh, I can't do that. It's really not that difficult. So students, when you're in Minecraft, you can click, you share a code, which when everybody has that same code, you all go into the same world together, and they all end up in the same spot. So when they're there, they have to be on the same tenant. So if my Minecraft Education Edition is using with a certain HWDSB, for example, I can't go on to the Minecraft Education that another district is using because it's a different server. But anyways, so basically the students are all invited, and right away you tell them, okay, you're a green team, you're a yellow team, and they have to take their characters and they go and stand on that. It's all automatic. Those worlds are already done. It's quite simple. I played. It took me about 5 minutes to learn it. Decide how long they will play. So there's a little control panel. You take your character, as the host, or you can have one of your students do the hosting, and you decide, okay, I'm going to give them 10 minutes. And there's a little control panel. I did a little screenshot right there, and you decide 10 minutes or so on. And then there's a start button, and you click start. And as soon as you hit start, the students then are transported into their areas of build. And they have an assigned time to complete it. And it's super fun to watch. It's even fun to do things like shoutcasting, and if you're using a digital, tenant like, or a digital tool like Zoom or Teams, you can bring it in there and then have a kid talk through what's happening in the game. So there is a score and a voting at the end. Again, pretty simple. The game ends. The students have a certain spot that they go and they vote by standing on that spot. So if you want to vote for the green team, you go stand in the kind of the green shiny glass. And if you vote for the yellow team, you go, and it automatically keeps score that way. And it's just fabulous, because at the end, there's even a way that you can have them save their builds and as an image and keep that, because some of them do want to save it. That's a very, very, very quick overview of how the esports work, but it's worth playing. Kids will absolutely have a blast. It's creative, it's collaborative, it gets them bringing in some of their leadership skills as well as followingship skills. They have to, you can't be a leader all the time, and so it gets them learning from each other and giving advice and giving feedback. I mean, there's so many amazing layered skills that they can learn through being part of something like this. Collaboration was the one I really noticed that they do. And every once in a while, a student that's working will feel really frustrated and they don't want to play, and that's okay, because then the other ones kind of pick it up. I did in the slideshow that I gave you a video. There's all sorts of videos that give you the same exact instructional that I did. I just did a very quick version of it if you're interested. Oops, we're not going to share it. So I just wanted you to see there are all sorts of pre-made, where here's one that's called Create the Lost Library. I showed this to a student today and they were just thought it was so beautiful, the books. And the Lost Library is quite beautiful. It's a very neat one. This one just shows all the other ones, right? Space students visit another world and they compete and build battle sets against the backdrop of space.
Oh, that's nice.
Angela, I think you have your audio on, just so you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, because I send you this something then.
There is audio on, Angela.
I send instruction. You have to look on that one right now, the assignment. And then you can look on the resume and the cover letter and the job description for next time.
Okay, sorry about that. I see there's a few extra people in here. Welcome. I did, maybe somebody who came at the beginning. If you don't mind, you can please, if you would please share the link to the resources so that people have all the notes. That would be awesome. So I've shared you a little bit about financial literacy. We went through, again, some of the philosophies of game-based learning, like starting low, low floor, high ceiling. We looked at universally designed environments. This is now, I'm going to go into an offline game that is fairly new. It's an Inuit design board game by Tomasi Magyuk. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, so my apologies if I'm not. I also put in the resource a link to his video. He is an educator, but he also put this game on here. It's called Nunami, and it is a game that he put on. The whole premise of this game it was created. It's created for 2 to 4 players, but I have played it with more because you can just be a team. But it's about the balance between humans and nature. But the game itself also talks and really gets kids talking about the culture of Inuit and what there's lots of really beautiful artwork that is involved. The rules are written in English, French, and Inuktitut. And it definitely brings a lot of conversation and skills regarding math, teamwork, making decisions. Do I put something, because the whole point is balancing human actions with nature and environmental perhaps issues that we're seeing. And I would say that it is not specifically a low floor. It is a little harder to learn at first, but it is so worth it when you learn it. It is so much fun. I've played it with students from grade, maybe 10-year-olds up to about 14-year-olds, but then again, way with my own family, and absolutely love it. Has anybody out here played this game at all? It looks pretty complicated in some in some respects when you look at these images. But when you have the game itself, these are the cards, and he's just sharing how each of those cards work with one another. But I love layered, complicated games. I find that's what we need more of in the class. You score points, are constantly scoring points by going up and down. So there's a lot of looking at math and integers. So here's what it looked like in person. This I can't know. This might have been one of the games we were playing, but again, it's not a simple game, but it is really worth checking out and supporting this educator and game maker. And I think I put a picture of him. I believe it was him and his daughter and his mother that created this game. So, and he is on Twitter if you have any questions. There are many Indigenous games out there for children. If it's something that you're interested or something that you're working on as part of, teaching some of the truth and reconciliation recommendations that we know are to, find the joy of the culture as well. But I think we need to make sure that for some of the communities, it may be also part of their sacred tradition. And so we just need to be cautious of that when using any games for any culture, really. But a few examples. This one I shared with you in the resource, so you have it. This is Shoo Shoo. This is kind of a fun, the first being a necessity. This is the Inuit games were born from two different needs. The first being a necessity to be strong, fit, and agile, which improved hunting and survivability. So, of course, times have changed a little bit, but some of the games that they did in this resource that I'm sharing definitely are based on some of their history and how they, and to help maintain and preserve that history and those stories that they told. High foot, high kick. It's played all to develop skills to deal with different types of land conditions that Inuit people had to face, right? So it's just an example. I'm just pausing for a minute just to check the messages. A couple of other games. We only have about 10 minutes left. And so I wanted to share a few of the other games that are my favorites and some freebies that I'm giving you in the resource that I have worked on. This is one called a mapping game. Let me see if I have it. Where it's just called World. It comes in a box. And as you can see, it also comes with a map, and in the box, it comes with cards that every single country in the world has its own card. So the kids then are given, we kind of just, I guess, almost we get rid of the entire deck. So every kid has, however many kids are there. And we play games regarding data, regarding places in the world. It absolutely a hit. The kids love it because it brings in other conversation. It's just the starting point. So that is definitely one of my favorites. It's called The World. Comes in a small black box, and very worth it. Really enjoyed that one. And another one is, if you haven't gone to this site, I follow her name's Jennifer Barron on Twitter, and she developed this this eco games, eco website. Absolutely amazing. She shares all of her things open, free, shares it with everyone because she just has a true love of bringing in environmental care and stewardship into the classroom. So she has many eco-centric games on her website that are free. I would recommend it. So you just go to ecoinquiry.ca. Of course, you can also go on Twitter and look at it up, or look after Jennifer Barron, but I would definitely give her kudos. I wanted to make sure I did that. And then Google Earth, if you don't know, Google Earth has, or don't use it that much, you use your Google Maps for getting around, but Google Earth has really upped their game in the last couple of years. It's a fan favorite. Everybody, the kids absolutely love looking into what is available, but they do have tons of different games in there. So you can, find you get clues, and you get to go around and try to find where things are that might get it absolutely neat. Here's just an example here. The world's greatest super thief has struck again. Can you track her around the globe to recover the stolen loot? Begin the chase here, and you click begin. It gives you a little quest. So there's so many, just getting to know the world around you, getting to, have that connection to the world. And that's part of that social emotional learning for many students, is feeling that connection to perhaps their own, their own place of where they're from. I deal with many kids, as many of us do, that have come from all over the world. And I think bringing the world into your own classroom and learning about it is huge for our social emotional needs and our mental wellness. Here was just an example. This is a PDF of an entire series. These take a couple weeks to do. It's not just a game you would do in one day, but they have different quests. I don't know how much you use quests in the classroom, but again, that's role playing and such. So we have about 8 minutes left, so I'm going to continue with some more games at the end that I have shared with you. So I wanted to share something about game-based learning and leadership and student leadership. So we often do, many people in the classroom have, our passion project, initiatives that we're doing where students pick, sort of that thing they love, and they research it, or they build it, whatever their passion project. So I had a student was last year, her passion project was building puzzles and then sharing them. So her passion project was being a leader, and she wanted to figure out, well, how could I be a leader? I want to be a leader, but like in what? And her leadership then was as well, how about some games and puzzles? And she created this site and shared it all over, shared on her blog. I've helped her a little bit, but I shared this with you in the resources as well. We call it Prachi's Puzzles. And she ended up getting to present her puzzles and share puzzles with classrooms all over the district and beyond. And it was absolutely fascinating to see her grow as a leader, but using a game-based approach in this context. It was all puzzles, and awesome puzzles as well. Puzzles and partner games. I have a little link I'm sharing with you see, it's best to be done with a partner, but there's usually I have 2 there. So this is another link that I've put on the slideshow, and it will be yours. It's things like pentagrams, Mensa, boosting IQ, things like Sudoku, number challenges. This is just a screenshot of the actual slideshow I'm sharing with you. Ancient Go, I briefly shared this in one of the other part 1 of the sessions. This is a strategy game, but I believe I would argue that it's low floor, very high ceiling, because you can start at a very basic beginner level and then move up. It looks complicated. You think, oh my gosh, like what's going on in that there? But when you read the instructions, it's a very simple game that can get complicated based on how big your board is. So I don't know. Part of me thinks is that it's a I argue with myself whether or not it's low ceiling or high floor in here. So I'm just looking at some of the awesome chat going on here. So thanks for sharing the Nunami site there. I appreciate that. And where did I get? I'm trying to remember. I believe I will get the link, but I might have got it directly from the seller when I got it. But or Amazon does have it, but I think it's Amazon US. I could not find it on Amazon Canada. So some of you might have a US account. Ancient Go, I did give a couple of videos to how to play it on a smaller board, and I also included in the resources an example Jamboard, so it's more interactive. Students can go online and play it against each other without a physical tool, but That's which is nice. So that would be an example of that. Okay, and then I did create something called Sudoku and Latin Square, and it's just a huge resource. Whoops. I don't know what happened there, of a whole bunch of Sudoku and Latin Square games so kids can battle each other. You take slide 6, I take slide 7. We have 2 minutes. I put timers in there, and you can use it with students, you know, in a corner of your classroom, whatever devices you have. It's all on a shared Google slide. So even if you're not a Google board, if it's just an open link, it is accessible for everybody. And then the pentonymous. Has anyone here used any of the work from Julia Dweck? So she shares a lot of her games online. A lot of, this is an example of one that she used. She does a lot of puzzles, and this was on Jamboard as well, pentonymous. I'm going to go quickly now because we're down to about 2 minutes. Quictionary is a game. These are all games I've tried to share in the part 1 and part 2, but kind of ran out of time like I am right now. So Quictionary is a fabulous game. Low floor, high ceiling. The students started making their own cards out of it. Google it, but I do have the link as well for just that will lead you to the same link you would find if you Google it. But the students learn all sorts of different strategies and concepts of word work, right? So it's your vocabulary word work. This is an example of, these are students who are in the gifted program, loving it. I would play this with all students, ESL students, new language learner students, depending, I would play this in different languages, right? So it's absolutely, it was a fabulous game. Another absolute favorite, has anyone here played Quiddler? So Quiddler is a fun game to play. Thank you, Katina. My son, who is 21, loves this game. We play this as a family as well, but it's sort of a mixture between, as it says here, this is from Wikipedia. It's a bit of a mixture between Scrabble and gin rummy, and it's pretty fun. And again, it can be, as you can see, you get an idea of what you're doing is you're putting down sets of words. They have to be words, so they can be 4-letter words, 5-letter words, and each. So it's a fabulous game if you haven't tried it before. So that's Quiddler. And then there's one called Idiom Addict. Not sure if anyone has this, but it was an expensive game. I bought it with my own money, and I'm so glad I did. I love this game. It was worth the price. The students love it. We have done so much work with it, where the students, basically they get these cards. So I gave an example of the card right here. After everything else, however, not the smallest amount. So they would get sort of the literal term, and then they have to come up with the idiom, last but not least, right? Commerce as typical, business as usual. And so it was really fun to go through this game. You can even you don't even have to play it in a game. You can just sit on the couch and go through the cards with your family, or even just within the classroom as a warm up to something else. Games do not lead you to direct learning on purpose. They take inefficient, sometimes playful route to get to the learning, and that is the learning. I love that quote. So quotes that I absolutely make me happy. So it is 8 o'clock. It's an hour's up, but I'm going to just share a couple more, and then we're going to do, if anyone's here, we can do a door prize. So just wanted to very quickly point out a couple. Math Builder, fabulous. I've done this with people who are very, very strong in math, and it really stumps them. When people say, well, I need some enrichment for my high flyers in my math program, I show them this game, and at first they're like, that's for little kids. Absolutely not. It is low floor, high ceiling. Fabulous game. It's, as you can see yourself, it's sort of a Scrabble in a number sense. Flux has all sorts of games, including math, and it really has layers. It starts easy, it scaffolds up, and it gets harder as to what some of the things you have to do in that card game. So that is it, because the rest of these games that I have here are all games that you can just search for, or I've shared you the links to them. So things like Number Scrabble, things like Sprouts, paper and pencil games, Dots and Box, right? So, and if you want to read more, there's some fabulous TED Talks on game-based learning, faster, better, smarter, stronger. These are on video games. I've shared my part 1, which you can look at, has a whole slew of resources of people who have influenced me with game-based learning and social emotional learning. I am so thankful everybody is here and watching, whether or not you're watching the recording from home, or at whatever time you're watching, maybe from your car. But I want to thank you to Intel for being the sponsor, and to Dell and OECM and ALP. I would appreciate it if you would complete the survey. And that, I forgot this one card right here, is the prizes, but I don't know if there is. Is there any? That is it. I did 3 parts. I will turn I will share all the resources, and I do notice that Dean is here, and I will share all of the resource, each of the slideshow, and I have Cole's notes for this that go along with the slideshow with you. I'm going to stop my screen share, and the recording will be stopped as well.